Okay, so before starting, I want to talk a little bit about what we're trying to do here. We're trying to talk about creative industries and technology. And when we talk about technology, I think everyone has a different definitions in their mind what technology is. So I want to start talking about that. If we analyze the word technology, it comes from the word techne, which means art, craft. So it can be kind of translated to useful arts. So it's everything that is being created from a mind process that has some kind of like utility for the real world. And that's why I think this conversation is so important with the creative industries and arts especially. And that's why I'm very happy we have Jessica and Luis here. Another thing I want to share with you is like how we are related. We have something in common here. So the three of us, we work on this exhibit. Jessica, she worked on the space you see now right here. She designed and built the space. I helped her and helped a little bit. I think like some of the squares on the wall are mine. So probably the best part of the exhibit. And Luis, he was the one who created sounds for the app that you can use to experience the exhibit. So talking about that, I want to ask you both, maybe we'll start with Jessica, how this work with this exhibit reflects your creative process and also like how it reflects your relationship with technology.
Okay, well, hello everybody, and thanks for the introduction. Before I answer your question, I just want to say that this view that I have is amazing because you're inhabiting the space and it just makes it complete. So you're asking me how this installation is related to my process and how it relates to technology.
Yes.
I'm really interested in technology from the standpoint of a visual artist who was pretty much working only on drawing and painting, and kind of in the sense that you're saying technology means like the craft. And that's the reason why everything that you see around you is hand-cut, hand-pasted, even though it has a very techie look. My interest in this intersection between whatever looks technological from the sort of computer era perspective when we talk about technology, and the handmade stuff is that I ask myself the question, what is the difference between what we believe to be real and physical to what we see as ethereal or what we see as digital that we cannot touch? And we believe that there is a huge gap between these two things, almost like they're opposite. But when you question and think about it, they actually may not be that different. And that's why I intend and continue to do my work with my hands and make it look digital.
Yeah. Thank you. Luis?
Hi everyone, I just want to thank you all for coming and sharing this wonderful evening with us. I have to say it's a little weird to be holding a microphone in my hand and not have like a piano in front of me. So if I do weird things with my hands when I'm talking, it's because I don't know what to do with them.
You can sing it for
Yeah. To answer your question, this exhibit is kind of very exemplary of what my relationship with music and technology. As a recording artist in 2018, it's impossible really to use to make music and recorded music without using technology. And that runs the gamut from using a computer to even using instruments. Everything that makes sound, in my opinion, is a form of technology. And so what I'm personally interested in when I make music is using the specifics of the tools, the idiosyncrasies of my medium, whether it's recorded music or acoustic music, to bring out the sound that is intrinsic and expressive of that medium. And for me, in this space, what was so unique about it was an opportunity to express a space, to express the movement through space. As you walk through the space with the app and with the headphones in, you're going to get closer to some Bluetooth beacons that are inside these garments and farther away from some. And that's going to reflect a change in the soundscape. And the goal with this project was to create a piece of music that reflected that movement process. It is, in effect, an emergent property of the way that we all move through the space. And that kind of sums up how I like to make music. I like to make music that reflects the medium and the tools that are being used. So.
Thank you both. So, when you talk about okay, we're gonna talk about technology, right? And this is a lot of technologies they're coming out every day. Of course, we're gonna talk about blockchain, but I also want to talk about other two technologies. When I think about creative art, creative industries and art, I think about, for example, virtual reality. Virtual reality allows us to immerse into a digital world that is the rules of the physical world they don't apply there. Everything is possible. They can transport to another place immediately. So Jessica, you work a lot with spaces. And my question is how this technology you think is going to affect your creative process and how you work?
Yes, so yes, virtual reality is the goggles that you put on and you can just look around and it's almost like you are in the space where you are not. But are you? That's why I asked that question, how physical and virtual are interlocked. So virtual reality, I see it almost as a game changer, starting from, when you think about the way we dream, it's almost like we dream in film, in cinema. How much has that affected our reality? I see virtual reality having an incredible affection is not the word in English, affect. Let's say that it'll have an impact.
Okay.
On the way we actually almost dream. I don't see that that's happened yet because the technology is still a little new, and I feel the virtual reality is still not quite evolved, kind of when filmmaking started. We didn't really know what was going to happen or how the narratives of filmmaking were going to develop into what we know it is now. What I see the virtual reality has that no other medium has is that you can actually be in the eyes perceiving any sort of situation. So if you're looking at a movie of a person walking on the city, having different interactions in the city, let's say, you're an outsider. You can see it. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is also talking about that, how you use virtual reality for
exactly.
Right?
So that's where I want to go. When you can use virtual reality, you can be the eyes. You're inside, actually experiencing from any point of view where you want, right? So with virtual reality and how I could connect it to my work, I would dream of having a virtual reality set that has this space when I'm in my studio, so I can plan out this whole installation without having to go to other means, So it would be a great tool, and I would use it as a tool to do what I do. I wouldn't really use it so much as a final end art piece or result, but as a tool I would use a pencil or ruler.
Yeah, and I agree with you, maybe it's not as mature as we'd like to, but I think it's getting very close and it's moving fast, so
Yes.
you have to be ready, so get ready.
Yes, I'm going to catch up on that one.
And then talking about other technologies, I think it's very mature. I want to talk about artificial intelligence. I think artificial intelligence is everywhere right now. We have machine learning, we have chatbots, it's being used a lot in finance. So, but it's being used a lot in the music industry, for example. We have Spotify, which has suggestion lists for us about what we like to hear artist songs. So my question is for Luis, how you see artificial intelligence keep changing the music industry?
Yeah, I think just to take a step back, one of the things that seems to be a pattern in the history of technology and music is that the introduction of technology expands not only the type of music and sounds that are possible, but it also expands the definition of authorship. Anytime a new piece of technology is written, is introduced, the music that's written tends to expand the idea of who wrote it. I think right now there are a lot of artists who are working in mediums and overlaying musical processes on top of things like the stock market, or there's pieces that reflect the process of knitting. Or there's even composers who work with computers, someone like Professor David Cope in the UC Santa Cruz University. People who are basically saying, I did not write this in the traditional sense. A process wrote this, a computer wrote this, a set of rules wrote this. And I think that from a compositional standpoint, this is a really exciting time to be in music, because as we expand the definition of who can write music, I see that as inclusive and as progressive and ultimately a really great thing for allowing a multitude of voices and perspectives in art.
Yeah, so you're not worried that they can't take your job, right?
No, I for one welcome my robot overlords.
I'm glad to hear that. Awesome. Thank you very much. So this brings us to the third technology, this little thing that we've been talking about called blockchain. Maybe you've heard about this. So blockchain is promising to disrupt everything, right? And I want to share with you what is blockchain to me. I don't want to tell how it works. I think like a lot of people know how it works. I probably can explain it better than me. But I like to compare blockchain to the printing press. Like that thing back in the time when we had books. First we had like handwritten books. They were written by monks in the monk times. They were very scarce, and they were controlled by empires and governments. And people they had to trust on these entities or organizations to like get access to information. The printing press allowed to print as many books as you want. They lower the cost, the time. Now everyone can have a book on their house and like say, I know this book is the same that the book that someone else has around the world. So that's the power, because now we don't have to go through religion to see what the Bible says, or to the government or the empire to see what are the laws. We can access them. In that sense, now we live with the internet, and we generate so much data nowadays, and this data has to be somewhere. We have databases that are living on corporations or governments, and people have to go through these entities to get access to the data. And we need those entities because we need to be sure that the data they have is correct. What blockchain is bringing to the table is that now everyone can have a copy of this data on their computer, maybe on their phone, and blockchains we allow people to be sure that the data they have is the same that everyone else have, that the data is in the blockchain, it was somehow agreed, because the community agreed that it should be on the blockchain. And also, like, if someone wants to destroy this information, they need to destroy this information in all the computers, on all the servers. So I think like that is going to change how we share information between us. And it's going to change businesses where like we trust these intermediaries to generate trust between us. So my question, I know Jessica, you're very interested in this technology. You've been working with like people from the tech industry. So why do you think for your area, your work, this technology is so important?
Okay, so I was invited by a blockchain company to create an art piece that represents the blockchain. Because my work is almost, you're going to become a very little bit of information, and you're going to dive inside the computer and travel around and go sightseeing, kind of like Tron thing, you know? And then this company said, we would like to invite you to create a visual representation of a specific software bridge between two blockchains. I didn't know much about blockchain. I had to go through this intense study because blockchain seems to be a little bit hard to tackle. So in my case, and my combination between art and blockchain has to do with using art as a form to approach people to blockchain, because it has a little bit of a cold feel to it. But if you experience it in the same way you're experiencing this installation, where you actually enter it and live it and feel it, it'll be easier to approach it. So I'm being hired to create this bridge between people and this blockchain space. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah,
yes.
And also how you see, for example, like artists using blockchain, like in the future.
So the applications of blockchain in the art world are multiple. There's many layers to the ways you can use blockchain. from tracking provenance of an artwork. If the artwork is registered on the blockchain, there's a total security for you to know what is going to happen with your artwork from now on, who has it now, at what price it was sold. You're not going to need that gatekeeper, that middle person to feed you that information. It's out there, it's public, you can access it. So provenance is one thing. Another thing is, for example, artists can monetize from their work. Let's say I create a digital file or a painting, and then I attach a token to my artwork, and then I can find a way to sell my artwork and move it around the blockchain space. So there's many ways. For example, artists right now, their artwork gets photographed, it gets shared all over the place, and they don't even get recognition. Nobody even knows who they are. What blockchain can provide is ways to incentivize people to, on one end, let's say, give credit to the artists, so they will get a token. And then what do they do with all these tokens? Right now we share information. We share information on Facebook, on everywhere. And what do we get from it? Absolutely nothing. What blockchain can provide is incentives with the use of tokens for that information that we share. So let's say a very popular artist on the internet is being spread around and a lot of people are talking about him, then a lot of tokens are being gathered by the people who share it. And then what do you do with these tokens? Maybe you can buy a ticket to go see the exhibition. Or does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially now there's so many like digital art forms now, like illustration, photography, and then taking it to the next subject, like music, right? Right now, like we have streaming apps. You can just download a song if you want to. So, Luis, how do you think this technology could like change that, or like improve it, or like make it worse?
Well, I think that thinking about blockchain as a secure, transparent ledger, it makes the most applicable use for this. It would be in royalty tracking and payouts. There are lots of artists right now who are owed a lot of money by digital streaming services, broadcast networks, various other performance venues. And there is really no good main way to keep track of that. There are a lot of very, very responsible performance rights organizations, PROs, that really take care of their artists. And they do the best that they can to track down the uses of these songs. But in my opinion, something I could see in the future, something like a strong, transparent, secure ledger of all songs, when they were performed, and how much this artist is owed. I could see the blockchain being very useful for that.
Yeah, that brings an interesting subject. I think when you do something, if you don't have enemies, someone who's trying to stop you to do something, you know the right, okay? You have to like, when you're disrupting something, you're making enemies, right? Example, Uber, like all the taxi drivers were like crazy, they were mad about it. So my question is like, who do you think is gonna try to oppose this technology? Maybe like,
I don't know. I think anytime you impose transparency and culpability and accountability on a process, you have to be careful about making sure that the black box of inscrutability, like basically, you have to make sure the lack of accountability doesn't shift elsewhere. You have to make sure that accountability is universal, and everyone who's a part of the process is accountable. A problem for the music industry is that no one really knows the ways that record labels do business. They are not beholden to any legislation. They don't have to disclose. So in that sense, streaming services pay out, and they disclose what they pay out, but then it goes into a black box, and nobody really knows what percentage of the money gets back to the artists. And so that's what's tricky about the music industry, is that there are a lot of dark corners where not a lot of light is being shown on it. And I think that for me, it would be a really great thing to be able to shine a light on some of these dark points.
That's a great way to put it. Jessica, I think they sing like black boxes where you plug into like shine some light on your.
Yes, I think about a lot of artists who start off selling their pieces for pretty much nothing. And then what happens is galleries and museums start taking control over the artist, elevating him or her. When the artist pretty much owes nothing out of what he or she produced. So who's gaining here? The artist? Probably not. It's mostly collectors and people putting this work in the market. So if artists were to tokenize their art, create a smart contract that has X, Y, or Z characteristics, a 10%, let's say, of every time my piece is sold, I will get a certain percentage. In order to distribute the wealth, if the artist becomes super famous in a just way.
Yeah, something that happened to Van Gogh, right? He
Exactly, or
died and he became famous. That could happen now. Like galleries have a lot of control on like
yes.
what the piece is sold for what. Okay, any thoughts on that, Luis? Like, we think like credit is not being given to our musicians right now? Say?
Well, one possible outcome that I'm optimistic about is that we move away from a platform-based, a kind of gatekeeper-based ecosystem and more towards a patronage system. I'd love to live in a world where if you listen to really only one artist and you love that artist and that's the only person you listen to, you should be able to decide that all of your money that you're spending listening to that or streaming goes directly to that artist. Right now, the way that most digital streaming services work, the money goes in, it gets put into a large pot, and then the various contracts that the highest 1% earners, artists, they get control of what happens to the pot. And it would be great to say, I really like independent artist X, and I only listen to independent artist X, and I, as a term of my agreement and usage of this platform, want all of my money going to this person.
Yeah.
And I think it should be an opt-in, or the best possible. I should be able to say to that platform, I want my money to go to where I'm listening.
And that's where blockchain can help, right? Because it can like give transparency, and we don't have to trust on this like Spotify to tell me how many times my song was played, you know. So I have a last question I want to ask both of you. We talk about technology, how it can impact creative industries. So I want to like revert the question. And you talk about, because you talk about like a little bit, you were creating this exhibit for like making people, get people closer to blockchain. So my question is like, how you see like your work, the creative industry work, art, music, can have an impact on technology, you know?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. When people talk about the convergence between art and blockchain is generally from the artist's point of view, monetizing and gaining control over the power of their art. Almost like as if the artists were some sort of victims, which I sometimes don't agree with. So if we reverse it the other way, if we think about, I don't know, the history of art, and when you see that there's a breakthrough that is happening, you're going to see it in art. You're going to find art as a document, like a testimony of the things that happened throughout history. That's the first thing you want to look at, art, is just telling the stories about history. And the fact that there's a movement, a really strong growing movement with art and blockchain makes me very positive about the future of blockchain on one end. And then to answer your question, yes, I think what I'm doing, for example, is just creating in collaboration pieces that explain how blockchain works. So for example, there's one piece, it's called proof of work, which is the way miners prove that the transactions are legit. But the proof of work is my